Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Tammy Radigan, and I'm a contract administrator with the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. And this is the fiscal year 2025 Growing Apprenticeship in Non-Traditional Sectors, Round 1 Technical Assistance Workshop. So just a few housekeeping items before we begin. First of all, this workshop is being recorded, and we will share the recording after the workshop with everyone who attended and/or registered for the workshop. Since we are recording, we ask that everyone remains on mute throughout the presentation and that you type any questions that you may have into the Teams chat box. We'll address all questions at the end of the workshop and open up the floor for anything additional. So let's get started. We're going to start with an overview of our office and a little bit about registered apprenticeship. Next slide, please. In March of 2018, Governor Murphy announced the development of the first Office of Apprenticeship in New Jersey, as well as the creation of the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. Next slide, please. The overall mission in creating our office was to build the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network, which was accomplished by the following initiatives. The Office of Apprenticeship working closely with USDOL and serving as a one-stop shop for employers, nonprofits, secondary and post-secondary institutions interested in developing apprenticeship opportunities. Supporting new and expanding upon existing pre-apprenticeship and USDOL registered apprenticeship programs in New Jersey. Establishing pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship programs in non-traditional high-growth occupations and sectors. Better aligning secondary, post-secondary, adult education, and occupational training to meet labor demands unique to New Jersey and develop career pathways that lead to economically sustainable wages. Helping apprentices earn college credit, access robust career counseling, and increase diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs. And lastly, removing economic barriers to train and upskill through targeted investments. Next slide, please. So what is registered apprenticeship? So the definition under the Code of Federal Regulations 29.6 is registered apprenticeship program means registered and approved by USDOL and provides classroom and on-the-job training in an occupation recognized as an apprenticeable trade and meets the program standards of enrollment and graduation. So registered apprenticeship is typically, it's a type of training model, which works in conjunction with employment, where apprentices are essentially earning while they learn the necessary skills for the trade. The USDOL then approves the registered apprenticeship program, similar to how an accreditation works with a degree program for a college. So what this does is helps ensure that the skills and the training that the apprentice receives is consistent for national application in employment for that occupation. Next slide, please. Registered apprenticeship programs, they consist of 5 main components. So first off, you have the employer and industry involvement. So when developing a program, input from employers and industry leaders is used to help guide the training outline for that occupation. As a result, the program structure is then uniform with any organization who adopts the outline for development of their own registered apprenticeship program. Number 2, you have the related technical instruction. So just like most training programs, registered apprenticeship consists of classroom learning to teach the fundamental and advanced skills for that occupation. 3, there's the employer and sponsor component of the on-the-job learning component of the program. So the on-the-job training is the employment aspect of registered apprenticeship programs, and it's utilized to reinforce the classroom learning by presenting real-world scenarios for apprentices to apply their skills that they've learned in the classroom. Fourth, of course, you have the apprentice who's involved in part of the program. And then finally, number 5, there's a progressive wage structure for the skills gains. This is a component that the USDOL helps sponsors to determine when they're approving their program. And basically, it incentivizes the apprentices to develop their skills while also fostering that employer-employee relationship. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of registered apprenticeship programs? So for the employer, registered apprenticeship reduces overall turnover in the company. It does this not only by providing adequate training to new employees, but also by creating an environment that supports career growth where the employer is often viewed as investing in their employees. There's also an increase in work productivity as a result of the supportive environment and also due to the progressive wage structure that incentivizes apprentices to learn more and develop their skills. It also helps to build the company's skill base by standardizing the training and training apprentices to meet the company needs. And it helps to create a pipeline of skilled workers and therefore assist by succession planning as apprentices advance with higher skills. Lastly, it develops quality standards by providing consistent training to each apprentice in the program, ensuring all necessary skills are learned. So what are the benefits for an apprentice? An apprentice receives hands-on career training, which strengthens their abilities in addition to, of course, receiving employment while they learn. Registered apprenticeship aids in developing relationships with employers as well. So it enables apprentices to connect with employers and to receive the learning support to holistically learn the trade. It increases their future earnings potential by developing those advanced skills that are associated with the program. And lastly, it provides apprentices with a portable national credential that is recognized industry-wide. Next slide, please. So registered apprenticeship consists of two different models. The first model is the traditional employer model. This is where the employer becomes a sponsor of the program, meaning they're responsible for the implementation, oversight, and reporting of the program. USDOL helps the employer to become a sponsor by assisting with program development and registration. So that's where they're the factor in that whole conglomerate. The Office of Apprenticeship in New Jersey can also be a partner by providing grant funding to help offset some of the associated costs with starting a program. And the employer as a sponsor also collaborates with training providers to determine where and how the related technical instruction will take place for apprentices. Now, sometimes these roles can be reversed, where the related technical instruction provider can be the sponsor and they partner with employers. It just depends on the specifics of your program. It's just important to remember that for registered apprenticeship to work, there needs to be an employer to employ the apprentices of the program. And then the last component, of course, you have the apprentice who's a part of the program and learning. Next slide, please. The second model is a workforce intermediary model. So all the same elements of the traditional model still exist. The difference is that the sponsor collaborates with multiple employers under this sponsorship. So an example of this would be a trade union. The union holds the sponsorship for the occupation, and they have multiple employers associated with the union who adopt the training model under the union's registered apprenticeship program. So as a sponsor, the union would still be responsible for all the same elements as the traditional model, i.e. would be like the implementation, the registering of the program, oversight, reporting. But employers who join their program for the on-the-job training part of uh, the whole model don't have to create their own separate programs. Rather, it's a simpler process for completing an agreement where they just complete a form and adopt the training, and the intermediary sponsor oversight sees the entire program. Next slide, please. So here's a quick overview of the accomplishments of the registered apprenticeship in New Jersey. Current figures, currently there are 9,464 active apprentices in the state from 6,783. There are 1,434 total registered apprenticeships in the program from 611. Since Governor Murphy took office in January of 2018, New Jersey has registered 823 new programs, which is a 100% statewide increase. There have been 21,062 new apprentices hired, 10,420 new industry recognized certificates of completion issued. According to data from the last quarter of 2017, net apprentices increased by approximately 2,681 from 6,783 apprentices, which is a statewide moving average that includes entrances and exits. And this growth trend accounts for a 40% net increase statewide for active apprentices. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was a brief overview of our office and registered apprenticeship. Now we will talk specifically about the Gaines Grant. So growing apprenticeship in non-traditional sectors. The mission of the Gaines program is to increase statewide capacity for registered apprenticeship opportunities by offsetting training and education costs for businesses in high growth industry clusters. Grant funds can be used for related technical instruction costs and on-the-job wage reimbursement costs. The Gaines program promotes increase diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs by encouraging recruitment from specific populations. Those populations are dislocated workers, DVRS qualified candidates, women, members of a minority group, youth, post-secondary students, county vocational schools participants, people with disabilities, veterans, recipients of state or other federal programs, and reentry populations. Next slide, please. The GAINS program was designed to establish new and expand upon existing registered apprenticeship programs in high-growth industry sectors such as advanced manufacturing, biopharma life sciences, energy, utility, and infrastructure, retail, hospitality, and tourism, financial services/insurance, transportation, logistics, and distribution, information technology/cybersecurity, green jobs/renewable energy, healthcare, construction and building trades, public service, educational services, early childhood education, and other STEM-related sectors. So we encourage applications in these industry sectors, but if your industry falls outside of one of those listed, that does not preclude you from applying. You can still apply and state your proposal. Funding for fiscal year 2025 round one is expected to be $5 million. That's contingent, of course, upon available funds. And the contracts, just so you know, they're anticipated to be for an 18-month period. Next slide, please. So here are a few of the key requirements for this grant to keep in mind while you're developing your applications. So number one, you must be an eligible entity or applicant to apply with a New Jersey presence. So for a full list of the eligible entities, that can be found on pages 9 and 10 of the Notice of Grant Opportunity. So please refer to that and make sure that you are one of those entities. Number two, you must be looking to start a new registered apprenticeship program or expand upon an existing registered apprenticeship program in an apprenticeable occupation. So the full list of occupations can be found using the link in this presentation. There's also a link in the NGO for that. The reason that this grant is specific to those occupations from this list is due to the processing time for registering the program with USDOL. Occupations from that list typically take a few months to finalize all program aspects, whereas new occupations not included can take up to a year. So with the grant contract anticipated to be 18 months, we want applicants to be able to utilize the contract period to the full extent by choosing occupations that have a faster approval process. Now, I know you might be thinking a few months is a long time and that process must be arduous, but I assure you that time frame is simply because USDOL works with your organization to tailor the registered apprenticeship program to your business needs. And with that process, there might be some back and forth that might take place before everything is finalized. Number three, we look for evidence of contact with the United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship for program development. So because the registration of your program can take a little bit of time to occur, the strongest applications will demonstrate that the organization has started contact with USDOL to talk through the program specifics. This also ensures that your organization has an understanding of registered apprenticeships, since USDOL will also explain those details in more depth. After this technical assistance workshop, we will provide you with a copy of the directory for USDOL's Office of Apprenticeship contacts, and your organization should contact the apprenticeship training rep in the county where your business is located for that. Lastly, a requirement of this grant is that all parties participating in the grant are affiliated with New Jersey. This means partners who will be employing apprentices, as well as the apprentices themselves, must be in New Jersey. This grant opportunity utilizes state of New Jersey funding, so that's why the funding must be spent to basically better New Jersey businesses and residents. Next slide, please. Funding incentives and expectations. So the NGO outlines a few funding incentives associated with GAINS. So first, we have the on-the-job training wage support. So applicants can request reimbursement through their budget to offset on-the-job wages for up to 50% of the wages at a rate of no lower than $17 per hour at date of hire. Caveats to this incentive are wage reimbursements cannot exceed 40 hours a week at 52 weeks. The maximum amount per apprentice cannot exceed $12,000 per head. and only regular wages are reimbursable, meaning there can be no PTO, holiday, overtime, sick, etc. Just a note too, if you are funded, applicants will be required to provide payroll documentation to receive that reimbursement when you go through the reporting process, but we would go over that if you are funded. Next, we have the related technical instruction support. So applicants can request reimbursement through their budget to cover related technical instruction costs. Caveats to this incentive are the RTI costs are only reimbursable once an apprentice has been registered with USDOL and has started a class. The wage rate for the apprentice cannot be below $17 per hour, and front-loaded RTI is not permissible under this grant. And just so you know, front-loaded RTI is classroom learning that occurs before the apprentice is registered and or able to enter the job site. So Gaines does not allow for this because we want apprentices to be working and learning simultaneously. You'll notice with both of those incentives that the requirement is that the apprentices are hired at a minimum of $17 an hour. This is an overall requirement for the grant. So for any apprentice to participate in Gaines, they must be hired at least $17 an hour. So keep that in mind as you're talking to employer partners. Now, expectations for funding and sustainability. We covered all the incentives for funding, but if you are awarded, we also want to ensure that you're aware of what we expect. So programs as well as the first class of apprentices must be registered with USDOL within the first 6 months of your contract. So we anticipate that the contracts will be starting February 1st of 2025. So that means by July of 2025, your programs would need to be registered and you would have to have at least your first class of apprentices starting the program. NJDOL funding is seed money, and a sustainability plan must be provided to outline the resources in place to continue your program absent of grant funding. Lastly, the maximum allowable cost per head is $12,000 per apprentice. So this means when you add all your budget items together and divide that total by the number of apprentices you plan to serve, that amount cannot exceed $12,000. So for example, if you plan to serve 10 apprentices through the grant, your budget cannot exceed $120,000. This requirement, it becomes a little bit confusing because of the maximum allowable cost per head for the on-the-job training reimbursement. So I'm just going to clarify a little bit more. If you want to request the maximum $12,000 per head in the on-the-job training wage reimbursement, then you would be unable to add any other budget line items because that would change the overall cost of per head that is allowable. I hope that's clear, but if it's not, we can discuss further with anybody else who needs clarity. Next slide, please. Favorable scoring elements. So throughout the NGO, you'll notice that certain features of the grant proposals are viewed as favorable when it comes to panel review. So to help paint a full picture of those elements, we compiled this list that you see here. There is extra weight given to applicants that will have a larger enrollment of individuals to be served or small businesses with fewer than 50 employees. That can be found on page 14. Extra weight's given to those that plan to train new hires over incumbent workers. That's on page 12. That plan to recruit apprentices from one or more of the target populations outlined in the NGO. That's page 13. That present reasonable RTI and OJT costs at a low cost ratio per head. That's on page 17. That develop a program in one or more of the target industry clusters on page 5. That include cost structure that illustrates the level of non-state funded investments in the project. That's on page 16. That provides specific details regarding program registration status with USDOL length of apprenticeship program, partnerships with RTI providers, administration of RTI, partnerships with employers, structure of OJT, and progressive compensation schedule for apprentices. That's page 14. And that provides specific and measurable outcomes that align with NGO and sponsored goal objectives. That's on page 14. So that completes the overview of the Gaines program. Next, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Al Nixon, who's going to go over the application process with you.
Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to start going over the application process. Next slide, please. Okay, the first steps, if you're considering for applying, your authorized official or the AO would register into IGX. That's found on page 18 of the NGO. The AO submits a letter of intent via email. There's details about the LOI on page 18, and there's a sample template that we'll go over in a second on the next slide that could be found on page 24. The NJDOL, our unit, approves the AO in IGX, which is our system that the application will be in, and provides access to the application. Two additional steps that you will have to take outside of IGX would be attaining a tax clearance certificate from the New Jersey Division of Taxation that is remarked on page 20, and there's more information on page 25 of the NGO about it with the link. And you also have to register with the New Jersey Department of Treasury, which is NJ Start, and there is information and the link on page 25 of the NGO for that. Next slide, please. Okay, here's a sample letter of the letter of intent. Please use this template. We try to keep everything uniform, and this allows us to do that. This should be done on your company letterhead and signed by your AO with all of the fields completed that's required. If we receive an incomplete one, we will send it back. Or if we receive one that is not in this format, we will also send it back. After you complete it, you can email it to the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov, and that address is located at the bottom of the form. Once we receive this letter of intent, we will email you back that you have been granted access, along with information on how to do each of the sections that we're about to go over. So you will also receive a PowerPoint for that once the AO is approved and the users are approved by us. Next slide. Okay, the proposal components. These are required documents. All the required information must be submitted into the IGX system. So after you have access, we're going to show you later on in the slideshow how to get to each of the pages in the system. But this is the information that you're going to have to gather in order to do a complete application. So it's the applicant information, your counties to serve, previous funding, whether it's through state or federal or any entity, your employers, sponsors that you will be working with, your gains deliverables, which will be what is expected to be delivered with the gains funding, the executive summary, your program narrative, the implementation plan, program sustainability plan, tax clearance certificate, budget summary and details, and then any miscellaneous attachments that you wish to add to your application. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to look at 4 of the documents in depth. They will be covered also in the PowerPoint once you're registered with the LOI, but we just want to go over these 4 sections of it with you because this is the meat of your application for the most part. The executive summary, it's describe your plan and process. It should include the description of your organization, past NJDOL funding if applicable, the occupations that your apprentices will be working in, the number of anticipated apprentices, the benefits of a registered apprenticeship to your organization and to the apprentice, the career pathway for the apprentice, and any certifications, licenses, or college credits that the apprentice will earn. In the program narrative, it should discuss the missions, goals, and objectives to demonstrate how the proposal aligns with the NGO, your connection to the local one-stop if you have one, the targeted population, so indicate the anticipated populations for recruitment and include numerical projections. a statement of need that demonstrates the hiring need, include the occupations, job descriptions, and if any, or if they're currently on the USDOL approved list. Organization commitment and capacity, describe the support, resources, and prior experience in a successful program implementation. And then past performance, provide a description of past grant performance, including outcome data for the most recent year. Applicants with prior unsatisfactory performance may not be funded for the fiscal 2025 funding. It'll be reviewed, and if there is any scoring that would have to change because of past performance, that will be talked about at that point. Next, please. Implementation plan. Describe how comprehensive program plan will be implemented. Must include a breakdown of the customer flow and an outline of case management services. Summary of expected outcomes. Occupations expected timeline for approval by the USDOL, the number of expected apprentice hires, the anticipated salary information, and any business organizational successes that are expected. An outcome timeline. Describe the anticipated program development benchmarks and milestones, target completion of new program registration, and hire date for new apprentices. And finally, the sustainability plan. Describe strategically for long-term success absent the grant funding. Summarize alternative funding sources and/or strategies to continue activities beyond the contract performance period. Next slide. The evaluation criteria. All applications are considered new applications and will be evaluated based on quality, comprehensiveness, completeness, accuracy, and appropriateness to the NGO. It's a competitive process, and applications are reviewed by a selection committee using a pre-established set of requirements. Awarded applicants will have administrative responsibilities, including but not limited to archiving records, completing monthly reports, and attending required meetings. Next slide. Okay. Next, we're going to get into the registration process in order to complete the application in the IGX system. So if you're a new user, if you go to the njdol.intelligrants.com site, you're going to see a new user click here button at the bottom. You can click the new user to begin the registration. When the registration page opens up, complete all the information, and at the bottom of the page where it says, please enter the program name you're applying for, enter gains, just one word, gains. When you are completed with this form, you hit register to submit. Next page. That will allow you to have access to log in. So once your registration is approved, begin the login process at the njdol.intelligrants.com site. This time, since your registration has been completed, that would have been done when you did your LOI. We would have granted you access and sent you the email that you have the availability to get in. You would go to the login and enter your username and password and select the login button underneath. Next page, please. That's going to take you to your dashboard when you first log in. Under My Opportunities box, if you click Filter to open the options for searching, this is where you would be able to search for your application. Next page, please. So when the filter opens up, you're going to see a drop down for different providers. You're going to select the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce, NJDOL, from the drop down menu. And then you're going to write the word gains, and then you're going to click search. When we received your LOI, we attached the gains application to your login. So in your opportunities, it'll open up to the gains where you will be able to select for 2025 application round 1. And when you click on it, the hyperlink will open the application. Next page. When you go to select the application to start completing it, there's going to be an acknowledgement that pops up with the description and the agreement language. In order to proceed, just select Agree at the bottom of the page, and that'll take you to the application homepage. Next slide, please. When the application homepage opens up, it'll look like this. After you select Agree, you'll be brought to the landing page for the grant. All the pages that need to be completed will be listed on the left-hand side of the page under Gains Application. So in the dark blue, you see Gains Application with a bunch of light blue fields underneath with little boxes next to each of them that are empty. As you go through the application, you have the ability to navigate through different pages of the application by clicking the desired page on the left menu or from within the page that you're on. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm sorry, I just want to go into one more thing in a little bit more detail. Can you go back one slide, please, Heather? As you complete these pages, they will put check marks in each of the boxes that they've been completed. If you work on part of a page and you don't fill in all the fields, you'll notice that you may have an exclamation mark next to it instead of the check mark. That means that there's something on the page that still needs to be updated by you. You need to check back into that page by selecting it, enter the missing data, save it, and then make sure that the blue on the left-hand side has the checkbox. Every one of these boxes should have a checkbox before we go to the next slide, which is for submitting. I just wanted to go over that with you. The next page, please. Okay, after you've completed the entire application, uploaded the supporting documents that it asked for, you're going to submit the application. Only the authorized official or the agency administrator can submit a completed application. So when you're ready to submit the application, use the navigation panel on the left-hand side to scroll down to Status Options. You will select Application Submitted to begin the submission process. If a document validation box or page appears, that means that there's errors that need to be corrected before the application can be submitted. That page, when it appears, will tell you which pages have issues. You would have to revisit them pages to fix the errors before you can move forward. After selecting the application submitted, the box will, and there are no errors, a box will appear asking you to confirm that you would like to submit the application. Click OK to finish the submission, or click Cancel to exit. So if you get to this point and you realize that there's something that you did want to add to it, you can cancel, go back, fix whatever you want to do, then go back to the status option and be able to submit it at that point. After you submit it, you cannot pull it back yourself to make any edits or additions to it prior to the deadline for submittal. If you do require the application be returned to you for something additional to be put onto it, you must notify our office at the apprenticeship.unit.njdol or .dol.nj.gov email for us to push it back to you for any edits. And again, this is only prior to the deadline date. There may be an option in the status options that says cancel application. Do not press that because that will cancel your application. It will not send it back to you for editing. Next slide, please. The important dates. The submission of the letter of intent, the LOI, and the registration in IGX must be completed before you can start the application in IGX. These deadlines are strict. There's no anticipation that they will be extended. And the deadline for the letter of intent, the LOI, is December 13th at noon. It is not by the end of the business day. It is by noon on December 13th. You will receive reminders if you attended this that the deadline is coming up. And then once the LOI is approved and you have access to the system, the application is due by December 20th at noon, not the end of business day. Final decisions on the award will be communicated to the applicants no later than 45 days following the panel review. Next slide. And this is our office contact information, the New Jersey Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Our director is James Manning. His contact information is here. Our chief of the unit, which is Bill Sarbuck, his contact information is here also. But we suggest that if you do have any questions or inquiries, send them to the general email, which is the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov, because everybody in the unit, with the exception of our director, receives the email. So by sending it to the one email address, you're sending it to all 5 of us at once. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and question time. What we're going to do is any questions that are listed in the meeting chat, I will go over and Tammy will address them. So if you could type them in here, that would be fine. Or if you can, after that, if you wanted to unmute yourself and physically or verbally ask the question, that would be fine also. I do see that the one question that we have in the chat is, can you talk about what a typical budget looks like?
So it's really based on what your business needs are. What do you need the grant funding for? They should be attributed to starting or expanding your registered apprenticeship program. Typical budgets cover the incentives that we talked about with related technical instruction costs, covering covering part of that, or on the job training, or both, combination of both. So it's really dependent upon what you need as a business in your budget. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, the one thing that since this is a competitive process, we can't give you specifics like tell you you have to do this or that. It's your proposal and like it can't come from us. Okay, the next question from Amanda is, can the funding be used for training programs that are less than 52 weeks or fund more than one cohort within 52 weeks?
So the 52 weeks element has to do with the on-the-job training, wage reimbursement. Most registered apprenticeship programs are at a minimum, I think, 2 years. So there's the expectation that you would be continuing the program beyond when grant funding or your contract is available. So yeah, 52 weeks is just about the on-the-job training reimbursement. So we can't reimburse for more than a year. Most of the time, grantees exhaust that funding before a year anyways, because $12,000 in the greater scheme of things, when you're looking at their overall wages, isn't that much. They earn more than that a year. Hope that makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay, the next question from Haley is, for the number of apprentices, does the number need to reflect how many will complete the program in the 18-month period, or how many will be hired into the program within the 18-month period?
It's how many will be hired and enrolled into the program.
Okay, Amy asks, can an apprentice be part of a HRSA grant for RTI and then be in gains for OJT, supplies, admin, etc.?
I'm not sure what an HRSA grant is, but I believe yes. It gets a little hairy if it's another state funded grant, but if that's a federal grant, then there's absolutely no problem with that.
Okay, Amanda also asks, does the funding cover administration of the training direct program salaries?
You can request that in your budget, yes. Mhm.
Okay, Matthew asks, the grant states that current providers will not be allowed to integrate new programming funded through this NGO with existing funded programs. Does this mean a current gains grantee would need to apply to fund new occupations in this round?
It doesn't necessarily need to be new occupations, but you need to be expanding upon your existing registered apprenticeship program, meaning you can't use existing apprentices that you have, but if you're looking to add new apprentices to your program, then you could apply for the funding to offset the costs associated with that.
Okay, next question is, can you apply for both PACE and gains?
Yes, you can. Just be mindful that the requirements for each are different and ensure that your organization has the capacity to handle both grants if you're awarded. That's going to be an important aspect of that.
Okay, and then can you submit more than one application for different industry sectors?
We suggest just submitting one and including all the industry sectors that you wish to cover for the grant. It just keeps it a little bit cleaner, and it's all going to be under your same sponsorship anyways when you go to register your program with USDOL. So that's what we suggest doing, just one application.
Okay, we have a question from Kenya. How is funding dispersed, meaning quarterly or upon needed?
So we are a reimbursement model and we reimburse monthly. So you would pay the upfront cost for whatever expenses incurred during the month. And then once that month has concluded, then you complete reports for us to request reimbursement for the funds that were spent in the prior month.
Okay, Ursula asks, can you expand on the definition of New Jersey presence for eligibility? If your business does business in New Jersey but not headquartered there, are they still eligible to apply as a workforce intermediary?
You could still apply, but your apprentices need to be employed in New Jersey. So you would have to have New Jersey employer partnering with your business or have a New Jersey location that's employing those individuals, if that makes sense. So that's what we mean by the presence. We do have national programs that have applied for funding before, but then yeah, like have multiple locations in New Jersey or throughout the country, but New Jersey is where the funding needs to be focused on.
Okay, do you have a general idea of how many providers will be funded or what the maximum request should be?
We don't. So we have a $5 million pot to work from. So that's why this is a very, very competitive process. And as you can see, we have 50 plus people on this call. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and thinking through your budget and what's going to be competitive. Um, if you look back at that favorable list that we went over and kind of look at those elements, like one of them is the low cost ratio of RTI and OJT to maximum number of apprentices. That's another thing to consider when you're building your budget, because that could make you look potentially more competitive with others. Just keep in mind those types of things. We can't really give you very specific answers about your budget and how much your overall should be. Just make sure that you're staying within a maximum of 12,000 per head, and it's competitive. So um, hopefully that answers your question.
Can you get more in depth on favorable scoring elements?
Yeah, so if you just look at that list of favorable scoring elements, I don't know if we can go back to it. Those are just like some of the things that we look for that really make competitive applications because they align with the initiatives of the department. One more. Yeah, there we go. So the department wants to serve a large number of individuals. They'd like small businesses to get involved in this process and start programs. We'd like to get a lot of new hires because that means more people in jobs. We want recruitment of individuals from some of those target populations to try and stretch the need, reasonable cost in your budget. developing a program in one of those target industry clusters, because those have been shown to have some high growth in them. So that's why we have that target. If we want to see a cost structure that illustrates your commitment to the investment in the project as well. Providing us, of course, with the specific details of your program and that contact that you're having with USDOL is really important, because you got to remember when you're submitting these proposals that a panel reviewer doesn't know anything about your business, your history, anything. So the more details that you provide them about like where you are in the registration process, or if you have a program, how that program's been operating, how you're looking to expand upon it, all those details are helpful for a panel reviewer to have context to your application. And then we have the provide specific and measurable outcomes. Of course, we want the goals and objectives to be met. So those are some of the things that we look for that make stronger applications, are these favorable scoring elements. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Do you need to be on the ETPL list before applying for funding?
No.
Can the participants start out in a pre-apprentice program on stipends and then get placed in jobs for at least $17 per hour?
As long as they're hired in your registered apprenticeship program at a minimum of $17 an hour, they can participate in gains. Yes.
Is a point system. I'm assuming they're talking about the evaluation.
Yeah, if you look in the NGO, and I can actually pull up, let me see what page it is, but there's a scoring chart that shows you the breakdown of what different proposal components there are and how much scoring, how many points each of them are for. So you can use that as a guide. I'm just going to get you the page number. Hang on a second. Sorry, bear with me 1 minute. It is page 11. So if you go to page 11 of the notice of grant opportunity, there's a chart there that explains the different elements that we look at overall and how the scoring is determined for panel. So you can use that as a guide. Hope that's what you meant by that for the point system.
Regarding administrative salaries, is there a preferred percentage cap?
Yes, our grants allow up to 10% of the overall grant for administrative cost. So you have to stay within that or below it. So after you put your budget together, look at your overall total budget request, 10% of that is what you can request. And it does need to be something that's added as a line item in your budget if you want to request administrative cost. It's not like an automatic thing that's added to your grant. So if you need the administrative costs budget line item, then make sure you add it to your budget.
Will new apprenticeship programs have a favorable review over those who have been in existence over years, or sites who have repeatedly had this funding? Essentially, is there a priority for innovation in areas of great need versus more as existing programs existing programs?
So there's a couple things that you mentioned there. So is there favor over an existing looking to expand versus a new program? No. Is there favor over a new program that's looking to start in an innovative area? There might be a little bit, because that's one of the targeted industry clusters that we're looking to expand upon. But our target industry clusters, if you look at it, include pretty much everything. There's a lot of different areas within that. So yes and no, I would say to your question.
Is the 12,000 per participant an all-in cap, meaning all training, all admin, G&A, and pay?
Correct. Yes. Yep. So when you put together all of the line items that you're requesting in your budget and you divide that by the number of people looking to serve, the number of apprentices that you hire, it needs to be 12,000 or below. And that would include all admin, salaries, non-personnel costs, RTI, and OJT.
Okay, Amanda is asking, how do you begin the process of becoming a registered apprenticeship?
So what you would need to do is reach out to your United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship Training representative. After this meeting concludes, we'll be sending you guys some reference materials, and one of those materials is a directory of contacts there. So you just look for the contact of the individual that serves the county where your business is located, and you'd reach out to them, and they would kind of talk you through the process and help you determine what occupational area you would qualify for what you're basically trying to do. And they'd walk you through the process too and make sure that it's a good fit based on your business needs. Um, so you would use that directory and we'll send that to you.
Okay, Matthew asked, would adding new apprentices to an existing registered apprenticeship program qualify as expanding upon the program?
Yes. Yep.
How many times can you apply for gains if awarded?
um, I don't know that I have an answer to that. You can keep applying as much as you want. You just need to make a case for how you're expanding your program.
Okay, can funding be used for curriculum development?
Yes, it can. Yep.
Okay, and then we do have, I believe it's Christine over here. I'm opening her mic up.
Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to open her mic up. Okay, Christine, is your mic open? Christine Higgins. Okay, Tammy, it's not letting me unmute. Just allow mic,
There we go.
but it didn't do it.
Hmm.
Christine, would you be able to type it into the chat? We're having a little bit of technical difficulty here.
Let me see if I go into the settings and just let everybody. See if that did it.
Hello. Hello, this is Christine.
There we go. Hi,
There we
Christine.
go.
How are you?
Okay, good, thank you. You spoke about a tax clearance certificate. Is that, when you file to the state so that you're tax exempt?
No, it's
Oh.
different. It comes from Treasury. They have a premier business portal, is what they call it, that you can sign up for. It's an electronic process. And it's just basically they check to see if you have any outstanding debts throughout the state. And we need to
Okay.
ensure that we have that letter to make sure that in order for you to be eligible for grant funding, essentially. It's just one of the requirements that the state has.
Okay, okay, great. Also kind of along those lines, the tax exemption the tax determination letter.
Hmm.
Is that a requirement? We've applied for that and it's obviously taken some time for us to get that. Is it a requirement in order to apply for the grant?
Are you talking about the tax clearance certificate or a different one, a
No,
different
a different
document?
one. When we applied to be tax exempt.
Um, I don't think we need that. Just the tax clearance certificate is what we look
Okay,
at. Yeah.
okay, great.
Hmm.
That's great. Thank you.
And thank you for asking that question too, because sometimes the tax clearance certificate can take a little bit of time for you to receive.
Okay,
Um, so we suggest that you do it early on, as Al had mentioned in those first steps. When you decide that you're going to apply, check off everything on that list. You're going to send in your LOI. You're going to make sure you're registered in IGX. You want to make sure you start the process for getting your tax cleared certificate to allow enough time before the application is due to actually have that document. And then you want to make sure that you register with NJ Start too, because if you're funded, it's kind of a quick turnaround once we make funding decisions to start getting your contracts rolling. And that NJ Start account is what sets up where your grant funding will be going, so you can start receiving reimbursements once we start your contracts. So those elements on that slide of the first steps that Al went over, make sure you take care of those right away at the initial stage that you've decided you're going to apply and go forward with this.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we do have another question in the chat. How often do audits occur if funded? Is it random?
It's not random. It's above a certain grant amount threshold, and I can't remember off the top of my head how much it is. But it does normally take a couple of years before you're audited, I believe, just because capacity with state government, we're a little bit slow and have limited staff to help with those types of situations. So if you're funded, we do go over the process to make sure that you're retaining receipts and making sure that your records are kept so that in the event that you are audited in the future, you have easy records to refer back to and supply internal audit with everything that they need.
Okay, that's it for their up. I see hand up. Can you? Honey, did you do something last time to make her?
I just changed the settings overall, so Kenya should be
No.
able to speak.
There we go.
Oh,
Hi.
yes, I'm here, but I answered the question in the chat, so I didn't mean to put my hand up, but thank you very much, and hello, everyone.
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? You can either unmute or type it in the chat. Okay, so main takeaways from this though, if you're interested in applying for the grant, first thing, get your registration in IGX completed and submit your LOI. Those two things need to occur in tandem. If you have one item completed and not the other, we're going to have to go back to you and say, hey, you need to do this before we can allow you access to your application. And that's that strict deadline of noon on December 13th. So make sure to get that item taken care of right away. Even if you're not quite sure if you're going to apply, you need a little bit of time to talk out logistics, maybe internally or talk to USDOL, but you think maybe you will, send in the letter of intent. There's no harm in doing that. Just get it in so you cover yourself and don't miss that deadline. And then, as we mentioned, the tax clearance certificate, make sure you take care of that. Other than that, if you have any questions as you go along the process, as Al mentioned, you can reach out to our general inbox. That's DOL Apprenticeship Unit at dol.nj.gov. And we can answer any questions for you. We'll also be sending follow-up materials. We'll send this recording and the PowerPoint presentation, a directory. We also have a document of frequently asked questions. But if there's anything else that you need, feel free to contact us and we'll do our best to assist you with this process. So, right. Hope everyone enjoyed the presentation and thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Great day for everyone.